All right, so this is specifically tailored to doubles, mind. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is doubles heavy specific. Like the baseline mechanics and stuff will translate, but everything else you're going to need to kind of do different stuff for singles. So just keep that in mind as we're going through, you know. Yes. Teacher, can you get a restroom? Unruly bunch of children. All right. So the first thing you want to look at in any Pokemon, any situation, what makes Pokemon such a good, unique PvP element is the level of customizability that you have with each Pokemon. So each Pokemon has a set base stat total that the higher the base stat total, the better the Pokemon usually is. The lower, the worse it is, because that means it just has worse stats across the board. A good example of a middle-of-the-road Pokemon is Sableye, our lovely lad, who is very meh in just about every category. But what's fun about Pokemon is you then have Natures, EVs, and IVs, right? Customize it. Sure, it's fine. So the easiest thing is Natures. So you'll see on each of these screens, there's one stat that's highlighted red, another one that's highlighted blue. That means that the red stat is being boosted at the cost of the blue stat being decreased. So what you end up having is, a lot of times, depending on what Pokemon you want to use a stat that's not very important to that Pokemon to decrease to increase a stat that's much more important. Gotcha. So like, for example, if you were to use a physical attacking Pokemon, you'd want to raise the attack and lower the special attack, which would be an adamant nature. That's one of the few that I like know off the top of my head. So that's the thing I went for. Because that would decrease a stat that you're not going to use to increase a stat that you will use. Right? Gotcha. And yes, Vintage, what is raise hand? Yes, it's a question. I'll just keep going until you finish typing. But after that, you have IVs. And for each stat, you get an IV number. That's determined as soon as the Pokemon is spawned, caught. Are you good to eat in class? Yes, go ahead. As soon as it's caught, bred, spawned, whatever, that IV number is set. And it's anything from 0, which is the worst it can be, to 31, which is the top it can be.
When you hatch it?
Yeah, anytime, however it spawns in, that's how it's functioned, right? So with that in mind, typically, most often you're going to want to run 6 IVs, which means it has perfect stats in every category, meaning the stat will be as high as it can be if you try to max it out, or just the general stat will be as good as it can be without any investment. There's exceptions to that, like Trick Room teams. Sometimes you want to have a 0 speed IV because that means you'll be as slow as you can be, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes,
So when you use Trick Room, it'll give you the boost.
Yeah, and I'll talk about all of that a little bit later too, in a little bit more detail. But like sometimes if you have a special attacker, they'll run 0 attack IVs. You don't see it super commonly, but especially in like really high level, you'll see that. Because that'll reduce damage taken from moves like Foul Play or Confusion Recoil and stuff, which calculate off your attack stat. So if you're not using it, you can 0 it out to make that do less damage.
Okay.
And then the last thing you have is EVs. And these are changeable. You get 508 EVs that you can spread however you want among any of the stats.
You said how many?
508. It's a very specific, weird number.
Okay.
You can put as much as 252 into a single stat. That'll max out the stat, which means if you want to do the math, that's 504 to max 2 stats, and you can put 4 into like an extra category or whatever. That's if you want to do like full max, but you can do them however you want. the advantage of this is it adds a lot of customizability, right? I can say, if I want to run my Pokemon to be more specially defensive, I can invest more in my special defense, and it might live where another person's set might not against certain attacks, right? So
where do you get these EVs?
So the easiest way, isn't it technically 254? No, it's 252. I will hold on that you can put 252 into a single stat category. If for some reason you want to like mix it up, that gives you that little bit of like customizability to say like, okay, for example, I can run a calc that says, okay, I need to put 50 points into attack in order to do this much damage to whatever Pokemon, right? So it offers that level of like, okay, how much do I need? What can I do? But at the end of the day, for basic team building, especially early on, the thing that most people do would be the two most important stats to whatever that Pokemon are. You just max them out, and then you throw the remaining 4 into another, like the third most important stat. That's usually the easiest like starting thing. Then when you're in battle, there's stat buffs and drops.
Wait, do you mind explaining where you get the EVs? I don't think.
Oh yeah, where you get them. The easiest way to do it is there are EV raising items. You can get them from shops in like Winden, I think sells them, but the easiest place to get them is the Isle of Armor. There's vending machines that you can get them for like really cheap in mass. Each one, like there's like Carbos and a couple other like ones like that, will raise whatever stat it needs by 10 EV points. So you would put 26 into a stat, that would put it to 252, that would max it out, right? You can also do it every time you fight a Pokemon. Each Pokemon has a EV awarded. That's how like when you're in a playthrough, you get EVs naturally, because every time you beat a Pokemon, it awards you a set amount of EVs depending on what Pokemon you fight. So if you need like super specific stuff, you can go and like fight a certain number of like a specific Pokemon that will give you like, if I need like 4 in like a certain stat, and I don't want to, like go over that, I'll go fight like a specific Pokemon and fight that 4 times or however many I need to get those points that are awarded.
So for example, if the Sableye that you have on right now, for example, if you need the special defense, what type of Pokemon would you
that I don't know off the top of my head.
You don't know off the top of your head?
What you can
do you know any of the other ones? Like, give me an example.
I know like usually like Chansey or Blissey, if you fight one of those, it usually gives you HP IVs, and it's like a set number. But each Pokemon, specifically that breed, will give you a set number, and so you just, the easiest way to do it is just look up like, hey, what gives me like the most or the number that I need of EVs in this category. But again, for just like base level, you're very rarely going to need a like specific enough number that you need to do that. Usually you can just go by 10s or max out a category, and that will always work. Since when do stat boost items go all the way to 252? I think it's this gen. It's either this gen or last gen. It's very recent. They used to cap at 100, and you had to train up the rest of the way by fighting Pokemon, but now they've adjusted it to make it easier to access. Way freaking easier. Yes, no, I would not make multiple teams every like other week if it were not for that option. They've made it significantly easier.
So what does River mean by it being capped at 100?
In old gens, you could only use stat raise items to boost 100 of an EV, and then you had to train it by like going and defeating Pokemon or whatever the rest of the way up. Now in the current gen, that no longer happens, and you can just use the stat item to boost it as high up as you want.
Okay, gotcha.
so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Then the only other main like stat thing that you should be looking for is buffs and drops in battle. So in both directions you can go either +6 or -6 incrementally in any stat. And the easiest way to remember it is every 2 is 100% increase. So if you're +2, say attack, your attack stat is double what its base number is. So like if my Sableye, for example, was +2 attack, it would have 167 times 2 attack. If it was +4, it would be times 3. If it was +6, which is max, it would be times 4. And it goes the same way the other direction. If it was minus, it would be halved. If it was -4, it would be a third. And then if it was -6, which is minimum, it would be 25% of that stat number.
Do you mind explaining that again?
Yeah. So like I have 251 special defense, right? This is an easy number to calc. If I used a move that were to raise my special defense in battle, say I got I used Amnesia, for example, is a move that raises your special defense by 2 stages. That would mean my special defense stat is doubled, meaning my current special defense stat is 502 instead.
Yeah.
So it changes the calc number of incoming attacks, and it works the same with everyone. Yeah, like River says, moves like Swords Dance, Iron Defense, anything that would like raise stats, or any max moves, etc., etc.
And each of these moves have a specific number that it increases?
Yeah.
Or is it all 2?
It's always in there. There's 6 stages that it can go up. So you can be +1, 2, 3, etc., up to 6. Each move incrementally will have a set number. So like Swords Dance, for example, will always raise your attack by 2 stages from wherever it is. A Pokemon with Intimidate as its ability will come in and lower the opponent's attack by 1 stage. So like if somebody got intimidated and then used Swords Dance, they would go up to -1 and then they would be at +1 still. So essentially you just need to know, you need to be able to keep track of sometimes how much you've been boosted or lowered, because that'll affect how much damage you're giving or taking, right?
Okay.
Am I serious now? Absolutely. Dude's trying to learn.
Telling you, VGC champ 2021.
There it is. 2021. Ooh, he's shooting high. He wants it in like a couple months.
I want it now. Right after this, bro.
Yeah, Gen 8 does show the stat changes, River. So if you're in a fight, you can click info at any point in time and click on any Pokemon, and it'll show you any buffs or drops that any Pokemon on the field has. So it's much easier to like keep track of what's going on. And that happens with any kind of like other field effects, anything else that's going on. You can check all of that at any point in time to be like, okay, I have 3 turns left until this runs out, etc., etc. But the most important stat in doubles especially is always going to be speed. Speed control is super important to you anytime, because it puts you in the driver's seat, right?
Yeah.
If you're attacking before your opponent, you get to deal damage first, which means they have to always worry about. And yes, Sammy, I see the question. Just go ahead and type it, and I will answer it as soon as you get it typed in. Anytime you are faster than your opponent, they have to adapt to you, right? Whatever you're doing, they have to be like, okay, I can't use maybe this attack because they're faster than me. And they might knock me out before I ever get the chance to attack, right? So having that speed control is very important. And so that's why almost every team you want to run has to have some way to speed control. And yes, water. A lot of water. We're going to be drinking a lot here because we're going to be talking a lot.
That room is like quite popular.
Yeah, so stuff like Trick Room, Tailwind, and other stuff that, I can kind of talk about a little bit more. Yeah. But Tailwind has gotten a huge buff in this gen, as has stuff like max moves. One of the best max moves in the game is Max Airstream. If you use a Dynamax Pokemon and use a flying type move, because it gives everything on your side of the field +1 speed, meaning you're just constantly getting faster.
After every move, after every turn,
after every time you use the Max Airstream, which you could use a maximum of 3 times, all Pokemon on your side of the field get that buff. So it's very helpful. And with 8th gen mechanics, they changed some stuff to where it used to be at the beginning of the turn, they calc the speed order, and whoever was the fastest goes first, and it just goes down from there until the end of the turn. Now it updates after each action, meaning if my Pokemon, for example, I have Tornadus, who everyone's going to scream as soon as I say the name.
Not Tornadus.
I disagree. Has Prankster, which means it gets priority moves. It can use priority Tailwind, meaning it goes first above everything else and doubles the speed of everything on your side of the field. It will then, after that move, recalc the stats of every other Pokemon. So if your Pokemon's now faster, it will move first, even if it wasn't faster at the beginning of the turn.
Do you want to explain that again, sorry? I got distracted by the chat.
No worries.
Someone finished the tortillas.
Yes. So speed gets updated as the turn goes on. So anytime you get a speed boost or raise, it recalculates the speed order and puts the new order. So like, say I have like Cinderace is really fast, and then I have like a couple other Pokemon, and then I have like, somebody who's like not very fast, like Sableye.
Yeah.
And my Cinderace uses Max Airstream, speeds up my Sableye, who would have otherwise gone last. It will now recalculate the stats again and say, oh, Sableye is now faster, and it'll move second instead of last.
Oh, wow.
So it recalcs as the turn goes on to keep whatever the current speed totals are. Same if you lower your opponent's speed, it'll then recalc and go, oh, this Pokemon's gotten slower. Now it's slower than this Pokemon, so it goes last.
Gotcha.
Can't sit here and not Pokemon while this is going on. But yes, speed control, as I said, there's a few ways you can get it. Priority moves is a really good one. A priority move is pretty much any move that goes outside of speed order.
Okay.
It can go up to +6 priority and down to -6 priority. +6, I think the only thing that's up there is like protect and stuff like that, meaning it'll always go first. If you protect or whatever, it'll always go first. There's no way to like go before somebody protects. Stuff like fake out is +4, meaning it'll go before most moves get to go. Stuff like extreme speed would be like +2, so it goes before priority, but maybe not like first every time. And then there's other like priority moves like Grassy Glide and Shadow Sneak and stuff. They're +1, which means they'll just go right before. So you have this like game of, okay, I can go outside of the order if I increase my priority, right? It goes the opposite way for moves like, I think Roar is -4. So it'll always almost go last. Trick Room is -6, which means it will always be the last move used in a turn.
What if like what if, for example, you have Cinderace, which is really fast, right? And you immediately use Tailwind. And they had pretty slow Pokemon at the very start. Like,
it does not matter if they have priority. It does not matter. You could have 3,000 as your speed stat. It would not matter because the priority move goes before the first move of the standard turn. Now, if you both used priority move, it would then default to speed order. If you use a move with the same level of priority, it would then go back to speed order.
Wait, so
like, say I have Sableye and I try to use a Shadow Sneak, a priority move, and you have Cinderace who uses Sucker Punch, which is also a priority move. Cinderace is faster than Sableye, and they have the same level of priority, which means Cinderace would go first.
Oh, gotcha.
But if you use like Pyro Ball, which doesn't have priority, then Sableye would go first.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. And so there's only a few priority moves, or are there quite a bit that
there's a decent number of them. Most of them will say it always goes first in the description of the move, but the common ones are like Shadow Sneak. You'll see a lot. Ghost type move. Sucker Punch is a good one because it's much stronger. It's 70 base power, where most priority moves are 40. But it only works if the Pokemon you use it on is about to attack. Otherwise, it'll fail if they use a status move. Stuff like, Fake Out is really common. Fake Out will always cause a flinch, which means that Pokemon doesn't get to move that turn. Which is always helpful. And that's like really early.
It's 100% for like a flinch if it hits.
Yes, it will always flinch every time.
Wow.
But it can the catch is Fake Out's a lot like it's a very like situational tool, because you can only use it the first turn that a Pokemon comes into battle. So if that Pokemon switches in, you can use Fake Out once, and then you can't use it again unless it switches out and back in. So it'll always flinch, and it always goes pretty much first. There's only a few things that'll go before it, but it can only then use it that one turn. So yeah, that's pretty much, again, like Icy Wind, Electro Web, Bulldoze are all moves that will lower your opponent's speed. Stuff like, again, Tailwind and Trick Room, which we can talk about a little bit once we get to like field effects and stuff.
Wait, so if you use like Icy Wind, for example, and the speed of the other Pokemon decreases, would the priority still?
Yes, priority takes precedent over speed.
Okay.
Whatever the priority of a move is takes precedent. So you could have the fastest Pokemon in the game and use Trick Room, and it would always go last, because Trick Room always goes last. You could have the slowest Pokemon in the game and use Extreme Speed and usually go before everything else.
Gotcha.
Cool. And I appreciate y'all in chat who are answering some of the small questions as we go here to the other people in chat. That's very appreciated.
Hi, Gaffy.
Yes, hi Gaffy. Welcome. Hope you're doing well. The next thing you want to look at is we talked a lot about this when you were playing
Still don't get
move types.
Okay.
There's three types of moves. You've got physical attacking moves, special attacking moves, and status moves. Physical attacking moves, as it would sound, they attack using the user's attack and the defending Pokemon's defense stat. And that's how it scales how much damage you do. So Pokemon with a really high attack stat would do a lot of damage using a physical move. And a Pokemon with a really high defense stat would take less from a physical move. Same goes for special, just on the special side of things, special attack and special defense. Status moves is everything else. Anything that's not a active attacking move falls under status. That can be stuff like Swords Dance, Dragon Dance, stuff that would raise your stats, or it could be moves like, Will-O-Wisp or something that inflicts a status on the opponent. There's a bunch of different statuses. I'm going to kind of fly through the three that you won't see very often. The volatile statuses: Attract, Confusion, and Curse. They're volatile because they only last as long as the Pokemon is on the field. So if you switch it out, they lose any of this thing, but they can also still get a full status like Burn or something else while they have this. You don't really see a lot of that because of the fact that it's very easy to get rid of. Stuff like Attract and Confusion and stuff, it's very easy to just get rid of it, so you don't see a lot of it. Whereas the more permanent statuses, the only way you can get rid of them is with either items or like certain moves. Like aromatherapy is a move that gets rid of any statuses. Burn is one of the most common ones you're going to see, and it's very good because it has the base power of physical moves. So if I have
physical moves?
Yes, only physical moves. So if I have an 80 base power physical move that I'm using and I get burned, that becomes a 40 base power. So it really hurts how much damage a physical Pokemon is able to do. So you see that one a lot. Paralysis has the speed, so it's another way to get speed control. Whatever Pokemon is paralyzed gets half their speed, and they also have a chance to not move. So you'll see that one pretty common. Poison is a lot more common in singles than it is in doubles, but you'll still see it every so often. Regular poison deals just a flat rate of damage every turn, whereas toxic poison increases. So like turn 1, you'd take a 16th of your health. The second turn, you'd take 2 16ths, 3 16ths, 4 16ths until you eventually died. Freeze you almost never see just because it's not super easy to get. There's no move. There's no like freeze inflicting move. It's only off of like, oh, it hits and it has like a 5% chance to freeze or something like that. So you don't see it very often just because it's hard to get any level of consistency with, but it's one of the most broken ones. Because you are unable to do anything at all until you thaw out, and there's no limit on how long it can be. It's just a 20% chance every turn to thaw out.
That's crazy.
So you could be stuck there for the rest of the game, if your RNG just doesn't go well. And sleep, one of the more volatile conditions, but very, very good. That Pokemon is not able to do any actions for 1 to 3 turns. Guaranteed to have at least 1 turn of sleep. It will max out at 3 turns of sleep. And that starts from the moment that it gets put to sleep. So say you attack before your opponent and then you get put to sleep, that does not count as a turn of sleep. You have to actually attempt an action for it to count as a turn of sleep.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I think of the teams that we have, we definitely have sleep on the Sun Trick Room team. Venusaur is a really common sleep setter. I think we have Will-O-Wisp, but I'm not sure on that one. But there's also ways to play around it, and some of that is with field effects. In Gen 6, they introduced it. They didn't really flesh it out until Gen 7, and now into this one. But there's terrains. Typically, the only way you're going to see these set up is either through a max move, or if one of the 4 Pokemon around the terrains, Rillaboom, Tapu Fini, Indeedee, or Tapu Koko, swaps in, because they'll set it on their own. Each one has an effect, and you want to be cognizant of what's going on whenever anyone's on the field. Grassy terrain boosts grass type moves by 30% and restores HP to every Pokemon that's on the ground every turn. And then the weird thing that honestly I didn't know until I looked at it, it halves the damage of Bulldoze and Earthquake when grassy terrain is up. Didn't know that was a thing, but apparently it does.
I mean, a lot of these things I didn't know were a thing.
Yeah, a lot of it's just like not well like explained in game, so that's where it's like you got to kind of take the time to be like, yeah, what is that? Psychic terrain is a very good one. Boosts psychic type moves by 30%, and any Pokemon that's on the ground cannot be hit by any priority move. So if I were to try to fake out or sucker punch you to try to get priority over you and it's in psychic terrain, it would fail, which means you just have to default to speed order.
Okay.
So it's a really good one to shut down a lot of like shenanigans. You'll see it a lot of times on like Trick Room teams, especially to like slow them down. Misty.
So
go ahead.
So for the psychic like terrain, it would never hit, or does it just
it would fail. So if I tried to use like extreme speed or something and use a priority move on psychic terrain, it would just fail. It wouldn't work.
For as long as that terrain.
For as long as the terrain's up, which is usually 5 turns. 5 turns from whenever it's set is when it runs out usually. Misty Terrain is the best pure, like, take out the RNG out of the game. It halves damage from dragon type attacks. It's the only one that doesn't boost attacks. It instead halves dragon type damage, and it prevents anybody on the ground from getting afflicted with any status. So no burns, sleep, freeze, anything like that. It prevents all of that, which takes a lot of like RNG stuff out of the game, right? You know, you don't have to count like sleep turns, you don't have to count anything like that. It's a very like safe option to just try to, you know, be like, okay. And that's why Tapu Fini is very popular.
Okay.
An electric terrain is the least used, just because it's kind of, there's not a lot of Pokemon that use it well. But it boosts electric type attacks by 30%, and it prevents grounded Pokemon from only falling asleep. So where Misty Terrain stops all statuses, electric terrain only stops sleep. Entry hazards we don't really have in doubles. They're a lot more common in singles, just because in doubles you only have 4 Pokemon, and there's 2 out at a time. So there's a lot less switching in and out. There's a lot less, you know, opportunities to set up. So you don't see a lot of entry hazards, but they, you know, there's a number of different ones. The best ones usually is Stealth Rock, just deals damage based off of how effective rock type moves are. So like if you use Charizard, who's 4 times weak to rock, and they switch into Stealth Rock, it takes 50% of their health as soon as they switch in.
Wow.
If you use something like what's a good example? Stakataka, who's a rock steel type, 4 times resist rock, it would come in and take barely any damage because it's resists rock. But you're not going to really need to see those. That's just kind of, you know, extra information. Tailwind, as we talked about earlier, really good if you want to just go fast, move, and be faster than everybody. It'll double the speed of every Pokemon on your side of the field, regardless of who was out when it was set up, who was there when it happened. It just doubles every Pokemon speed, meaning you'll have more often than not like complete speed control while Tailwind is up, which always lasts 4 turns. Trick Room does the exact opposite. It reverses the speed order. So whatever your speed order ends up being, it just flips it so that the slowest Pokemon moves first. So you have to kind of play around. How can I not let my opponent set Trick Room, right? If you're a team that wants to go fast and your opponent wants to set Trick Room, you want to make sure they don't get the opportunity to. Good ways to do that is stuff like Taunt, which makes it so you can't use status moves, or you know, just like if it's a weaker Pokemon that's trying to use it, if you can double into it in some way, you know, and just kill it, because Trick Room always goes last. But more often than not, the Trick Room setter is a pretty bulky Pokemon, so you got to be careful with that kind of strategy. And then finally, the last field effect that's really of any importance is Trick Room does not affect priority moves. That's correct. Yeah. I didn't mention that, but if you have a move that's +1 priority, even if you're the fastest thing on the field in Trick Room, you'll still go first. It flips the speed order, but not priority effects.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of times you'll see like Psychic Terrain used with Trick Room, so that people can't use priority to get around your Trick Room.
Okay.
And then weather, rain and sun are exact opposites of each other. Rain boosts water, sun boosts fire, and they have the damage of the opposite. So if you have rain, fire type attacks aren't very effective. If you have sun, water type attacks aren't very effective. Hail, you don't really see that much unless you're trying to like run some gimmicky hail team, or you use the ice type max move. But it's just anything that's not an ice type takes 1/16 damage every turn. Sand, you'll see a little bit more common. Yeah, I'll get to all that, River. I got you. Don't worry. Thank you, though. Sand is good because it not only does damage the way hail does, but it also gives any rock type on the field a special defense boost, which a lot of rock types aren't super specially bulky, so that helps them like balance out. That's what makes like Tyranitar really good, is it sets its own sand and is a rock type, so it gets a natural boost to special defense, which is the only stat that it's not like already really good in. And then yes, as River said, there's certain moves that get affected by the weather. The most common ones you're going to see, Thunder and Hurricane will never miss if it's raining. Stuff like Solar Beam, Solar Blade, etc. will charge immediately if it's in sun, stuff like that. Okay. But it's rare that you're going to see those kind of things outside of like very specific situations. So
okay,
you don't need to worry about it too much. I'm going to take a quick drink here because I've been talking nonstop. There we go. So now we're on to the part that's just kind of like more for fun than anything. You know, the nice thing about this gen and this game is that they added rental teams, so you can take whatever team somebody else built that you like, play around with it, see how you like it, and go from there. You don't ever have to actually build your own team if you don't want to. But if you ever decide down the line that you do, these are just some nice things to always keep in mind. And it also helps when you're looking at somebody else's team. Sometimes you can pick out and go, okay, this is what they're trying to do, right? If I see somebody else's team and they have like these 3 Pokemon, I'm like, oh, they want to run Sun, they want to run Trick Room, they want to, you know, you can kind of get an idea before you go into the fight what they're trying to do. The biggest thing, you want to make sure you don't run into an issue of having too many support Pokemon or too many offensive Pokemon. You want to have a healthy mix of both, because if you run nothing but offense, somebody can just slow you down and, you know, or Trick Room you or whatever, and you're in a really bad spot, right? If you run nothing but support, you won't be able to do enough damage to win. Yeah. So you have to find that happy balance, right? The other thing is you're bringing 4 Pokemon to every match, but you have 6 Pokemon on a team. Sometimes that leads people to make a team out of 4 Pokemon that they bring every single time, and they don't ever have the other side, right? The other 2 Pokemon always stay on the bench. They're not really, you know, they don't really do anything on the team. When you build a team, you want to make sure you have all 6 Pokemon that do something. They all want to be there for a reason, right? Because the more options you have, the more flexible you can be with how you approach a game, right? If I have the same 4 Pokemon that I'm always bringing to every fight, I have to play it a certain way. But if I have all 6 of my Pokemon that are good and I can choose 4 of them, I get to go, okay, hey, for this matchup, maybe this Pokemon's not as good and this one is. I can, you know, sub that out and change the strategy accordingly.
Okay. Gotcha.
Why don't people use 4 Pokemon and the other 2 to mind game? That does actually happen. The big reason is when you actually like play for real, it's usually best of 3 or best of 5, which means if you bring a certain strategy once, they see it, they're going to adjust to it game 2. But as far as like on the ladder, I know there was a team that somebody used, I forget who, that was like a Shedinja team, where the whole goal of the team, they brought the same 4 Pokemon every time, and the whole goal of the team was to get Sturdy on Shedinja, because then it never dies, right? It has 1 HP. Sturdy will make sure if it's at full HP, it'll always live on 1 HP, so it never dies. You can't lose. And then their last 2 Pokemon, they added a rain team to make people prepare for a rain team that wasn't actually coming. But that kind of stuff doesn't usually work in like actual gameplay when you have to play like multiple games, because people will see it and go, oh, that's not actually what they're doing. They adjust game 2 and you lose. So you gotta have that level of like flexibility, right? Where all 6 Pokemon on your team, you feel like, okay, I can use this if the opportunity presents itself, right? Mm-hmm. You also want to be careful on support mon, especially, to not give it all my friends are dead syndrome. Essentially what that is if you have a Pokemon that's only support. It only does like support things. It doesn't offer anything else. I can just focus down whatever the other Pokemon is, kill the other 3, and then that thing's useless by itself. It has all my friends are dead syndrome. If every other Pokemon's gone, it doesn't do anything. So you want to be careful to not have support Pokemon that just don't do anything on the field, and you can focus the other one. Like Sableye. Yes, Sableye is a great example of you have to be very careful with how you run it, because you don't want it to be left on its own, right?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
So here's just a few examples of different types of things you're going to see, different roles that they'll fill on the team. You want to have a mix of Dynamax Pokemon and non-Dynamax Pokemon for your offense, because you can only Dynamax one Pokemon a game, right? So you have to have some other Pokemon that are offense that aren't going to Dynamax. Good examples of that, Urshifu, both forms of it. Very good non-Dynamaxed. They're usually here for a good time, not a long time. They'll either run Focus Sash or a Choice Band, which I'll go to items after this. Explain what that kind of means. Dracovish never wants to max if it doesn't have to, because its whole gimmick is Vicious Rend, does a crazy amount of damage if it's not maxed, and that's all it wants to do. Stuff like Porygon Z, Colossal, they're almost always going to want to Dynamax, because that's where they're at their strongest, right? Porygon Z, because it gets to use essentially Hyper Beam every turn without having to recharge. Colossal gets access to a really powerful max move. We have a Colossal team, actually. One of the teams we built is Colossal. A very popular Pokemon, very good. Something you always have to kind of plan for anytime you see it in a preview. Redirection Pokemon, Indeedee, Amoonguss, and Togekiss. A lot of times they're there for support, and they have a move, either Follow Me or Rage Powder or something, that will redirect all attacks into that Pokemon. So they're tankier, and they might be paired with something that's really frail, and they can take the hits for that other Pokemon while it does damage or whatever else it does. So to get around that, you have to either like taunt it or just kill it outright to make sure it can't keep redirecting you. Intimidate, very common. Incineroar has been the most used Pokemon in VGC for like 6 years running, maybe more.
Wait, it's been 6 years since Sun and Moon came out?
I don't know. Whenever it got its hidden ability from Sun and Moon was when it became like really popular, because its hidden ability is Intimidate. Intimidate, every time you swap in, it lowers both of your opponent's attack by 1 stage on each switch in. So it's really good to kind of manage damage on a lot of strong physical attackers. So these are Pokemon, a lot of them, Arcanine's not as common, but Landorus and Incin are very common. You'll see them all over the place. They're going to want to come in and out a lot. They're going to want to cycle in like crazy. Landorus is more offensively inclined. It'll come in, hit hard, and then swap out with either like U-turn or just hard switch. Incineroar, more support based. It has Fake Out, so it can flinch stuff. It can taunt. It can Parting Shot, which will lower the opponent's attack and special attack, and then swap the Pokemon out. So it wants to come in and just keep cycling in and out over and over again to keep weakening your opponent. Prankster, really good ability, gives priority to any status move. So any move that's not an attack, it gives priority to. So you'll see a lot of support Pokemon. Grimmsnarl is there to set up screens, and that's about it usually. Whimsicott, really good Tailwind setter. It has Prankster, so it will always set Tailwind first, meaning you'll be faster right from the start. And then like Sableye, I just put in there because he's a good boy, but Will-O-Wisp Prankster, Quash Prankster, stuff like that, where you can just kind of like mess with strategies. You can do stuff ahead of when people would want it. The big thing with Prankster that changed, I believe in this gen, that I still have to adjust to, you cannot use a Prankstered move on a dark type. So if I have a status move that gets boosted priority because of Prankster, it cannot go into a dark type. It will always fail. That's a new thing, I think, in this gen, that I'm still trying to like catch up with and understand. And then the last one is Trick Room. Porygon 2 is far and away the most common Trick Room setter. Insanely bulky, very strong back. It usually Tri-Attack or Ice Beam. Can do some damage back. It has Recover, so it can keep its health high. A lot of other good utility moves. Same with Dusclops. Super tanky. Always runs Eviolite, so it's a unit, very hard to get rid of. Can set Trick Room, can do like Nightshade is a really good move that it has that will always do 50 damage regardless of anything else that's going on. Every single time it does 50 damage. Apparently Gen 7, really? See, I didn't play enough of Gen 7 to know. And then Glastrier has taken over as the most common Trick Room sweeper. It's very slow, very strong, and it has an ability that raises its attack every time it picks up a KO. Meaning if you don't deal with it quickly, it can very quickly snowball out of control, where it's just one-shotting everything. So that's a very good Trick Room mon and something you want to watch out for.
Okay.
The last thing really is items. Just some common items, just so you know kind of what they do. Life Orb, one of the most common, just general damage output stuff. It gives you a 30% boost to every attack you use. So it makes you much stronger, but you lose 10% HP every time you attack. So it makes you much stronger, but at the cost of you don't stay around on the field very long. Very common on Dynamax mons, especially because when you Dynamax, any percentage-based damage still goes off of your original HP, even though you now have double your HP. So you take half the percent when you Dynamax. So you only take 5% from Life Orb every turn instead of 10. So it's a very common thing. Weakness policy. I think we have 2 teams that feature weakness policy. Raises your attack and special attack by 2 stages if you're hit by a super effective move. Good for bulky Pokemon that maybe don't have the most offense, but can get take a super effective hit and then return it and dish it out much stronger. A lot of times you want to find ways that you can proc your own weakness policy. That's very common. Something like Colossal's a really common one. You hit Surf into your own Colossal, do a little bit of damage to yourself, activate your own weakness policy, and then start hitting like really hard.
Okay.
Gotcha. Will this presentation be available later? Yes, I'm gonna cut all of this section out and make it its own like separate video from the full stream, so that this section can just be its own thing as well. The choice items are the biggest like offensive buffs. There's 3 of them: Band, Scarf, and Specs. Band raises attack, Scarf raises speed, Specs raises special attack. They give you a 50% boost on damage.
But it's
so
only one move.
Yeah, so you can only use the first move that you use. So you become much stronger, but you have to use a single move. Good example of this is Dracovish loves to run Scarf because it has one move that's really strong, Vicious Rend, that will double in damage if you move before your opponent. So you run Choice Scarf on it, make it faster, and then it only uses that move and just does a ton of damage because it's always moving first.
Yeah.
And then Scope Lens is a little bit less common, but you'll see it on like Togekiss and stuff. Just raises the crit ratio of Pokemon by 1 stage. It's very good, and crits are very good because they hit through any kind of buffs that you have. So if you get a crit, it doesn't count any, like if you have like +2 defense or like light screen or anything else up that like would help reduce the damage and you get crit, it doesn't count any of that. It just goes straight through it. So that's really good to help deal with like tanks and stuff. Vicious Rend is a disgusting move. Yes, River. I think once you factor in ability and everything else, it becomes like 500 base power. Wow. It will one-shot most things. Dracovish is very strong. It's now found a lot of counterplay, so it's not as common, but because it only can use one move, but like if you get it set up right, it's very strong. On the defensive side, you have stuff like Assault Vest, which I think you used in your playthrough a little bit. Yeah. Raise your special defense, but you can't use anything that's not an attacking move. Light Clay.
I completely forgot about that in the I think the final battle. I was like, wait a second.
I remember that.
I remember. Yeah, I was like, oh no.
Light Clay extends Reflect and Light Screen, which I don't know that we talked about either of those, but Reflect boosts the defense of your entire team for 5 turns. Light Screen does the same for special defense. Normally they last 5 turns. If the user holds Light Clay, they last 8 turns instead. So it makes it so you're really bulky for a really long time. Safety Goggles, you get a little more use now because Venusaur is really popular, but they protect you from weather. So like you don't take damage from sandstorm or hail, and they also protect you from powder moves, so you can't get like put to sleep with sleep powder or like rage powder to redirect. They protect you from all of that. Eviolite, very common on stuff like Porygon and Dusclops, really bulky Pokemon that aren't fully evolved. It'll raise both their defense and special defense. Huge, but it only works if they're not fully evolved. That's what makes like Dusclops way more common and way better than Dusknoir, even though it's the evolution. Leftovers, just slowly restore your HP. Pretty simple, straightforward thing there. Not, every turn that you're sitting on the field, it will just keep restoring HP. And then Focus Sash is really good if you have really frail stuff that wants to stay alive. If you're at full health and you get hit, it's essentially the same as having Sturdy. If you get hit from full HP, you'll go down to 1 HP and you'll live at 1 HP. A lot of times you'll want to run like some way to get a, if you know your opponent has a Focus Sash, you want to run some way to get rid of the Focus Sash. Maybe like Fake Out plus attacking it or something, or have some kind of like, you sometimes you just have to guess, because it's something that's very commonly run on Pokemon. Like Urshifu runs it a lot as a Pokemon because it hits like a truck, but it's very frail. So that running Focus Sash makes sure that it at least gets 1 hit in. Yeah. Which makes it really good.
So
and
does
then
it show like before the thing?
Like, when you look at like team preview, when you look at team preview, you will only see the Pokemon that they have. You won't be able to tell items or any kind of set or anything like that. There are like tournaments and stuff where they'll have open documentation where you'll be able to like see your opponent's team ahead of time. But as far as just like playing casually, it doesn't give you any of that information.
Okay, cool.
And then the last thing that you'll see a lot of people hold is berries. There's really 3 like categories of berries, and that's where I didn't want to go into like all of them because there's like a ton of different ones. Lumberry is really common because it'll just automatically heal if you get a status. So if you get put to sleep or you get burned or whatever, it'll automatically heal you right away. It only works once, as do all berries. You eat them and they're gone, but it'll make sure that you get away from at least one status issue. Resistance berries, there's a whole list of them. You got to find the right one for whatever type, but there's one for each type that reduces the damage that you take from a super effective move 1 time. So like the one that's on screen is a Koba berry. You see that run a lot of times on like Venusaur and some other stuff that would decrease a super effective flying type move. So it cuts the damage that you take from a super effective move one time, allows you to maybe live a attack that you normally wouldn't. And then HP restoring berries. There's Citrus Berry, which will proc when you have half health and give you 25% of your HP back. And then there's a list of them, like Ayapapa and a few others, that depending on, you have to use depending on like your nature and stuff, so they're a little bit more tricky and complicated. But they'll proc when you hit 1/3 HP, and they'll restore 1/3 HP. So they'll give you more back. I think that actually might have changed. I think it might now be 1/4 and 50%, but they'll give you more back, but they don't activate until later. Will the damage reduce berry guarantee that you live? No, it will reduce the amount of damage taken, but there's no way to like guarantee. So like if you use it, say on like a Pokemon like Colossal to weaken like a water type move.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a really strong water type move and you're 4 times weak, it might still kill you, right? Like there's no way that it like stops you fully. It's just going to reduce how much you take.
Mostly a crit will still kill you. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gotcha. Stuff like crits and stuff, that's part of the RNG of the game. That's just kind of like, yeah, sometimes that happens, and what can you do about it? Mm-hmm. Here's the teams. They're going to be a little small here just because, I tried to fit them all on. But we have 4 different teams that we tried for us today. Trying to, again, play with different styles that you want. I don't know which one you'd want to, hop in with, or how you'd want to feel like you'd want to play. But we have a Trick Room team that's Porygon 2, Glastrier, Torkoal, Venusaur, Urshifu, and Tapu Fini. It's a good one to run both ways because Venusaur becomes really fast in Sun, which Torkoal helps it set. But Torkoal's also super slow, so it can run in Trick Room as well. So you can run it kind of out and in Trick Room at the same time. We have Hyper Offense, which is Incineroar, Garchomp, Tornadus, Kartana, Regieleki, and Tapu Fini. That one's just going to be, you want to go out fast, you want to do a ton of damage, you want to, really just beat your opponent before they get a chance to really do anything to you. We have the Colossal team, which is highlighted by Weakness Policy Colossal. Colossal is super common because it's got Steam Engine and Weakness Policy. So if you hit it with a water type move, it immediately gets +2 attack, +2 special attack, and +6 speed. So it maxes out its speed, makes it really fast, hit like a train. Very strong. And you have a couple of ways to proc it yourself on this team, be it with Dragapult and Surf, or Urshifu with Aqua Jet. And then the last one is Slow Pace. Not really my style, but very, very popular. A lot of people like to play it. Lapras, Gmax sets both screens for you. It sets Aura Veil, which is essentially the same thing as running both screens. So you barely take any damage, and your goal is to take 2 kills quickly before they do, and then you can Perish Song, and at that point their last 2 Pokemon have 3 turns left to live no matter what happens, and it's very hard a lot of times to come back from that kind of spot. Yeah, it's Perish Song is one of those things where it's the slow play. It's well played, but it's definitely not my style, but it's very good, especially against like certain other compositions.
I mean, we can go into this and just like try.
Yeah, that's where I'm just like, whatever one you wanna run with, we can run with.
For sure.
But yeah, that's the end of the talking excessively section. Now we're actually gonna fight. If anyone has any questions, either you or the chat, before we hop into that, please let me know. I will do my best to answer them.